Spiritual power exists within you long before any belief system defines it, before any doctrine approves it, and before any external authority attempts to control it. You came into this world carrying a frequency and intelligence, an inner technology that is older than every book, every institution, and every rigid rule created by humanity. This power is not something you acquire, it is something you awaken. It is not granted to you, it is remembered by you. The universe does not reside somewhere out in distant galaxies, separated from who you are. It is woven into your very being, the same force that drives galaxies into motion, that forms stars from dust, that breathes life into matter, pulses inside your consciousness. You are not merely a spectator of creation, you are an extension of it. From the moment you were born, this inner power was active. Children naturally display curiosity, intuition, creativity, imagination, and fearless authenticity. Those qualities are expressions of spiritual power. Over time, society begins to shape minds through fear, limitation, and conditioning. You are told who to be, what to believe, what to fear, and how to behave. You are taught to doubt your intuition, to silence your curiosity, and to surrender your inner authority to external voices. Slowly, the world convinces you that you are small, dependent, unworthy, and separated from something divine. But no matter how deeply that programming is layered, the spark inside never disappears. It only waits for you to reconnect with it. This power reveals itself when you listen to your inner voice instead of external noise. It shows up in your ability to think independently, to examine ideas without fear, and to challenge beliefs that do not resonate with truth. It lives in the quiet moments when you feel guided, protected, or suddenly inspired without knowing why. It appears in your resilience when life tries to break you, and yet you rise stronger, wiser, and more aware. It expresses itself through empathy, love, creativity, courage, and awareness. Spiritual power is not loud, forceful, or arrogant. It is subtle yet unbreakable, calm yet unstoppable, humble yet immensely powerful. When you recognize that this power exists within you, you stop searching desperately outside yourself for validation or salvation. You realize that no institution decides your worth. No human authority grants you access to the divine. No fear-based doctrine determines whether you are worthy of love, peace, or enlightenment. You begin to understand that your consciousness is the real sanctuary, your mind is the real scripture, and your alignment with truth is the real form of worship. Instead of praying from desperation, you begin to live from awareness. Instead of begging for connection, you remember that you are already connected. Awakening this power requires presence. It requires honesty with yourself. It requires the courage to dismantle inherited beliefs and replace them with knowledge, experience, and wisdom. It requires stillness, reflection, and a willingness to understand your own thoughts, emotions, and patterns. When you explore your inner world, you discover that intuition is a guidance system, not imagination. You discover that thoughts shape perception, perception shapes reality, and awareness reshapes everything. You begin to operate from a higher state of consciousness, where life is no longer random chaos, but an intelligent field responding to your vibration. With this awareness, fear loses control over you. Guilt and shame lose their chains. You stop living as a follower of systems and start living as a creator of your own path. You feel grounded, powerful, and present. You respect spirituality not as a tool of control, but as a path of liberation. You stop asking external sources for permission to be powerful. You stop shrinking yourself to fit illusions of limitation. You recognize that greatness, wisdom, clarity, and divine intelligence are not outside somewhere waiting to be delivered to you. They are already encoded within your consciousness, waiting for activation through knowledge, love, awareness, and courage. Spiritual power within you is real, unstoppable, and sacred. Once you acknowledge it, nothing can truly dominate your mind again. Nothing can imprison your spirit, and nothing can convince you that you are less than extraordinary. Fear-based religion has been one of the most effective psychological tools of control ever constructed, because fear is the most primitive and powerful emotion in the human experience. When a belief system convinces people that they must fear their creator, fear punishment for thinking differently, or fear eternal suffering for questioning authority, it creates a mental prison far stronger than any physical chains. Fear shapes behavior. Fear silences curiosity. Fear conditions obedience. Instead of guiding the human spirit toward growth, understanding, and connection with a higher consciousness, Fear-based systems suppress that natural expansion and keep people dependent on external authority for approval, safety, and identity. Throughout history, fear-driven doctrines have been used to rule societies, justify power structures, and keep populations submissive. When people believe that questioning a religious system is equivalent to rebelling against the universe itself, they will police their own minds. They begin to censor their thoughts, suppress their doubts, and punish themselves internally long before any authority does. Fear creates loyalty, not out of love or understanding, but out of anxiety and insecurity. If someone believes they are constantly being watched, judged, and threatened with punishment, they live in a state of psychological stress that limits their ability to think freely, explore truth, or develop spiritual maturity. This kind of religion often portrays a divine being as wrathful, vengeful, and ready to punish the slightest mistake. It promotes the idea that humans are fundamentally flawed and must constantly prove their worthiness through obedience and submission. It frames natural human experiences such as curiosity, emotion, and individuality as dangerous or sinful. As a result, many people begin to fear themselves. They fear their thoughts, their desires, their personal power, and their own inner guidance. Instead of exploring their potential, they shrink into a life of guilt and constant self-judgment. Fear-based systems also thrive on the concept of exclusivity. They teach that only a chosen group is accepted while everyone else is condemned. This creates division, superiority, and conflict among people. It encourages judgment instead of compassion and separation instead of unity. When someone believes their spiritual safety depends on rejecting others, they become easier to manipulate. They will defend the system not because it empowers them, but because they are terrified of losing the protection they think it provides. Fear becomes mistaken for faith. Another powerful control mechanism in fear-based religion is the promise of punishment after death. Instead of inspiring people to live consciously, ethically, and lovingly in this life, many are conditioned to live in constant anxiety about the next. Life becomes less about growth, purpose, and self-realization, and more about survival, compliance, and emotional self-torture. This mindset keeps individuals focused on fear rather than awareness, on obedience rather than understanding, and on blind belief rather than personal experience. Yet beneath all this fear, there is a deeper truth that such systems try to hide. An awakened human being is difficult to control. A person who understands their own worth, spiritual power, and connection to the universe is not easily manipulated. Someone who recognizes love, consciousness, and inner awareness as the true essence of spirituality no longer depends on fear to feel safe. Fear-based religion keeps people spiritually small because awakened individuals do not bow to control, intimidation, or psychological oppression. Fear has never been a language of true spiritual growth, authentic spiritual. It empowers instead of weakens. It expands consciousness instead of suppressing it. It encourages questioning, exploration, learning, and direct connection with the divine instead of dependence on mediators. Fear-based religion may control behavior, but it does not elevate the human soul. It limits, restricts, and confines what was meant to be infinite, curious, intelligent, and free. From the moment a human being takes their first breath, they are not born as a mistake waiting to be forgiven, nor as a flawed creation in need of correction. They arrive carrying immense potential, innate intelligence, and a spark of cosmic consciousness that predates any doctrine claiming otherwise. Humanity is born powerful, not sinful. Every newborn child enters this world with limitless capacity to love, learn, create, and transform reality before fear, guilt, and social conditioning take hold. Human beings exist in a state of purity, curiosity, innocence, and boundless wonder. That is not sin. That is pure potential. That is not imperfection. That is raw divine brilliance in human form, yet for generations. Humanity has been told a different story. Many have been conditioned from childhood to believe they are inherently unworthy, broken, or spiritually defective. They are taught that they must constantly prove themselves, constantly repent, constantly feel guilty, simply for existing. When people internalize the narrative of sinfulness, they shrink emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They begin to doubt their own worth and suppress their natural brilliance. Instead of recognizing themselves as creators of their experience, they accept the role of helpless beings constantly at the mercy of judgment. This belief limits growth, confidence, and connection to higher consciousness. If humanity were truly born broken, the natural tendency of the human spirit would be destruction, emptiness, and selfishness. But that is not what we see. Instead, humans instinctively seek connection, compassion, meaning, and love. People risk their lives to save strangers, form deep emotional bonds, express creativity in art and science, and constantly strive to make the world better. Those impulses do not come from sin, they come from strength. Within every human being is an inner wisdom that guides them toward growth and evolution. Even when life becomes challenging, there is a natural pull toward healing, learning, and transforming. That drive itself proves the power within the human spirit. Calling humanity sinful keeps people afraid of themselves. It convinces them to distrust their emotions, intuition, and natural desires. It makes them feel guilty simply for being human. But guilt is not a spiritual foundation, it is a psychological chain. When people believe they are inherently flawed, they become easier to control. They rely on external systems to tell them who they are, what to believe, and how to live. They surrender their power because they are conditioned to believe. They never had any to begin with. Yet beneath all the conditioning, there is still a powerful truth. No belief system can erase the intelligence encoded in human consciousness. Humanity carries creativity that designs civilizations, technology, medicine, philosophy, and art. Humanity carries emotional intelligence capable of deep empathy, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Humanity carries spiritual intelligence capable of introspection, awareness, expanded perception, and connection to universal consciousness. These are not characteristics of something sinful, they are evidence of extraordinary power. Every person holds the ability to shape their life, elevate their mind, and evolve spiritually. That is the true nature of human existence. Even mistakes and imperfections do not prove sinfulness, they prove humanity's power to grow. Mistakes are part of learning. Pain is part of awakening. Challenges strengthen consciousness and refine wisdom. Struggle is not evidence of weakness, it is evidence of evolution. Every experience, both light and dark, teaches something valuable. A being capable of learning, healing, and transforming is not flawed. They are dynamic, adaptable, and powerful. To accept that humanity is born powerful is to reclaim self-worth. It means recognizing that life itself is a divine gift, consciousness is sacred, and existence carries meaning beyond fear and shame. It allows people to stand tall instead of kneeling in guilt, to seek understanding instead of living in self-condemnation, and to embrace their place in the universe with confidence rather than insecurity. Humanity is not a failed creation begging for mercy, it is a magnificent expression of universal intelligence capable of infinite growth. When people remember that truth, they stop living small. They think deeper, love stronger, create boldly, heal courageously, and rise above limitation. They live not as frightened beings desperate for acceptance, but as powerful consciousness exploring existence with purpose and awareness. Humanity was never born to feel ashamed of existing. Humanity was born to realize its strength, unlock its potential, and embody the powerful essence within. Heaven is not a distant realm hidden beyond the clouds, reserved only for a select few after life ends. It is not a reward dangled before humanity as a prize for obedience. Heaven is a frequency of awareness, a state of consciousness that can be experienced here and now within the depth of the human mind and soul. It is a transformation in perception, where fear dissolves into understanding, separation shifts into unity, and limitation gives way to infinite possibility. When consciousness elevates, reality changes, and life itself becomes richer, clearer, and more meaningful. Heaven is not somewhere you go, it is something you become aligned with. From childhood, people are often taught to wait for happiness, peace, and spiritual fulfillment in some far-off future beyond death. They spend their lives hoping for approval, salvation, or acceptance, believing that spiritual peace exists only in a destination they have never seen. But while they are waiting, they miss the opportunity to experience a profound truth. Consciousness shapes reality. The quality of your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and awareness determines the quality of your inner world. When your inner world is filled with fear, guilt, conflict, and self-doubt, life feels like a battlefield. When it is filled with clarity, love, understanding, and awareness, life feels like heaven. Heaven as a state of consciousness means awakening to the power of your own mind. It means recognizing that peace does not come from outside forces, but from inner alignment. When you are conscious, present, and aware, you no longer live in reaction to fear. You do not allow external systems, rigid doctrines, or social conditioning to dictate your emotions or your sense of worth. Instead, you begin to operate from inner mastery. You understand your emotions instead of being controlled by them. You observe your thoughts instead of being trapped in them. You choose love instead of fear, wisdom instead of ignorance, and awareness instead of blind belief. In this elevated state of consciousness, compassion naturally expands. Judgment fades. You stop viewing others as enemies, competitors, or outsiders. You begin to see the shared humanity, the shared consciousness, and the shared divine spark in every person. This unity dissolves the illusion of separation that has fueled conflict, hate, and division for centuries. Heaven, as consciousness, is a frequency of love, empathy, and connection that transforms how you treat yourself and how you treat others. It is not passive escapism, it is active enlightenment. When consciousness rises, suffering does not disappear instantly, but your relationship with life changes. Challenges become lessons, pain becomes growth, obstacles become opportunities for expansion. Instead of asking why life is against you, you begin to understand how life is guiding you. This awareness brings peace even in chaos, strength even in difficulty, and clarity even in uncertainty. That inner stability is what many have misunderstood as a promised paradise somewhere far away. It has always been accessible through awakening, not waiting. Heaven as consciousness also means embracing responsibility for your inner state. No institution can give it to you. No leader can awaken it for you. No external authority can manufacture it. It is an inner journey. It requires reflection, healing, self-awareness, and the courage to challenge limiting beliefs. It requires breaking free from fear-based conditioning and stepping into a higher frequency of truth and understanding. When you do this, life feels lighter, purpose becomes clearer, and existence becomes expansive instead of confined. This realization liberates the human spirit. It removes the idea that spiritual fulfillment is delayed or controlled by others. It empowers individuals to live consciously, love deeply, think freely, and exist with awareness now, not someday. Heaven has never been locked behind gates in another realm. It has always been a state of consciousness waiting to be activated within the human mind and soul. Truth does not fear examination, and it never demands blind loyalty. Instead, it invites exploration, curiosity, and understanding. Truth grows stronger when questioned because genuine truth can withstand investigation. When an idea collapses under scrutiny, it reveals itself as belief, manipulation, or illusion rather than authentic knowledge. Throughout history, the greatest leaps in human consciousness, science, philosophy, and spirituality have come not from obedience, but from the courage to question. Questioning opens the mind, activates intelligence, and breaks mental chains built by fear, tradition, and unquestioned authority. When individuals are discouraged from asking questions, something important is being protected, and it is rarely truth. Systems that rely on unquestioning belief depend on maintaining control over perception. They thrive when people accept without thinking, trust without understanding, and surrender without examining. Whenever someone says, "Do not question, simply believe," it is a warning sign that the belief cannot survive the light of awareness. True understanding welcomes dialogue, exploration, analysis, and learning because it has nothing to hide. Questioning is not rebellion against spirituality, wisdom, or higher consciousness. It is an essential part of discovering them. Curiosity is the engine of growth. It is what drives human beings to uncover how the universe works, explore the depths of consciousness, and understand the mysteries of existence. Without questioning, humanity would never evolve. Knowledge would stagnate, consciousness would shrink, and awareness would remain confined within the limits of tradition. Questioning is not disrespect. It is respect for truth, respect for the mind, and respect for the intelligence encoded within human consciousness. Truth encourages individuals to seek knowledge rather than simply inherit beliefs. It pushes them to research, observe, learn, and experience reality for themselves. It does not demand worship. It demands understanding. Real truth is discovered through study, contemplation, experience, and awareness, not by memorizing dogma. When people actively seek knowledge, they awaken their minds, expand their perception, and elevate their consciousness. They stop living passively. and begin living intentionally. Knowledge frees them from fear because understanding dissolves confusion and uncertainty. Those who question do not do so because they are lost. They do so because they are searching. They refuse to settle for surface-level explanations or emotionally manipulative narratives. They want to understand the deeper layers of existence, purpose, and reality. This mindset leads to empowerment because a questioning mind cannot easily be controlled. A mind that thinks critically cannot be deceived as easily. A person who searches for truth internally instead of blindly accepting external claims becomes spiritually sovereign rather than spiritually dependent. Questioning also strengthens conviction. When something proves true through examination, reflection, and understanding, it becomes deeply rooted within consciousness. It is no longer a belief forced upon someone. It becomes a knowing, an inner certainty grounded in awareness. This kind of understanding is unshakable because it has been tested, experienced, and verified internally. Blind belief can crumble under doubt. True understanding only deepens. Truth also promotes humility. When people explore knowledge, rather than clinging to rigid certainty, they recognize that learning never ends. There's always more to understand, more to discover, and more to unfold. This humility opens the door to wisdom. Dogma closes the mind, curiosity expands it, fear silences inquiry, truth empowers it. When humanity embraces questioning and knowledge-seeking, it moves closer to authentic spiritual awareness. It shifts from being controlled to being conscious, from being followers to being thinkers, and from being dependent to being empowered. Truth does not chain the mind, it liberates it. It invites humanity not to blindly believe, but to wake up, to learn, and to understand reality with clarity, intelligence, and courage. Reclaiming spiritual sovereignty and self-mastery begins with recognizing that no external power has the authority to define your soul, control your destiny, or dictate the boundaries of your consciousness. You are not created to live under constant psychological submission to systems, doctrines, or individuals who claim ownership over your spiritual journey. Sovereignty means remembering that your connection to the divine, to universal intelligence, and to your higher self exists naturally within you. It does not require validation from institutions or permission from anyone who claims superior spiritual rank. You came into this world with inner authority, and reclaiming it is one of the greatest awakenings a human being can experience. Throughout life, many people unknowingly hand over their power because they are taught to doubt themselves. They are told that wisdom is only found in books written by others, that truth is only permitted through approved teachings, and that enlightenment belongs only to those granted it by a system. When individuals accept this narrative, they step away from their own intuition, silence their inner voice, and allow external control to shape their beliefs and identity. Spiritual sovereignty requires reversing that conditioning. It requires the courage to stand in your own awareness, to trust your own experiences, and to honor your own connection to consciousness without fear of judgment or rejection. Self-mastery is not about dominating others. It is about mastering yourself. It means gaining control over your thoughts instead of allowing fear, guilt, or programming to run your life. It means becoming emotionally aware so that anger, insecurity, or manipulation no longer dictate your choices. It means becoming mentally disciplined, spiritually aware, and consciously present. True power is the ability to remain centered while the world tries to pull you into chaos. It is the strength to choose understanding over reaction, wisdom over impulse, and awareness over blind obedience. When you achieve this level of mastery, you no longer move through life unconsciously. You move with intention, clarity, and purpose. Reclaiming sovereignty also requires questioning what you've been taught, not with rebellion born of anger, but with intelligence rooted in curiosity. Ask yourself what beliefs truly resonate with your inner truth and which ones exist only because they were handed to you. Ask yourself whether certain teachings empower you or simply make you dependent. Every belief that weakens your sense of self, every idea that convinces you to fear your own consciousness, and every doctrine that demands submission instead of growth is a chain meant to keep your awareness confined. Sovereignty means breaking those chains, not through aggression, but through understanding. Once you see manipulation clearly, it loses its power over you. When you reclaim spiritual sovereignty, you stop viewing yourself as small. You recognize that you are not just a follower of existence, you are an active participant in the creative process of life. You understand that your thoughts influence your reality, your energy shapes your experiences, and your choices determine your path. This awareness transforms the way you see yourself and the world. You no longer feel trapped by circumstance because you understand that consciousness allows you to transcend limitation. You rise from being conditioned to being aware, from being controlled to being empowered, from being spiritually dependent to being spiritually free. Self-mastery also brings responsibility. With awareness comes accountability for how you think, speak, act, and create. Sovereignty is not an escape from responsibility. It is the acceptance of a higher form of responsibility where excuses disappear and conscious living becomes the priority. You begin to care about the quality of your energy, the integrity of your actions, and the alignment of your intentions. You strive not merely to exist, but to evolve. You move beyond survival. And step into self-realization. Reclaiming spiritual sovereignty and self-mastery means choosing to live awake rather than asleep, conscious rather than conditioned, powerful rather than fearful. It is the journey back to your true self, the self that has always known its worth, always carried its own wisdom, and always possessed the power to transform reality from the inside out.